Casemiro's been absolutely transformative for United this season, and when he's played, it's been completely obvious just how much United hurt when we don't have him. He's got a presence, he has got a character, he has got an ability that just can't be understated. The stats for United with and without Casemiro are bleak reading, and it makes you wonder, is this the best version of Casemiro that we've seen, or have we just found the place where his impact is the most significant? It's very easy to make the argument that he's been our best signing post Sir Alex Ferguson. On one hand, because there haven't been a lot of them. On the other hand, because he's been so good. Bruno has to be in the mix for that as well in terms of the numbers that he's produced, but in terms of the impact on a team, I think Casemiro's probably stands above even Bruno's. In a report in the Times, a supposed unnamed club veteran said Casemiro is the most important signing since Eric Cantona. That's getting giddy. Cantona delivered a lot. And since Cantona, you signed some pretty big players, including Roy Keane. So I think to call him the best signing, inclusive of all of those, in basically the last 30 years, is a hell of a shout. And that might be a little bit giddy, but it's easy to see why he's been put in such esteemed sort of company. Paul Scholes said he's probably as close to Roy Keane as you're going to get. I think he's been brilliant. And I'm glad somebody like Paul Scholes, who played with Roy Keane, actually noticed that. Because it was something that I was trying to tell my son. You see the way Casemiro's playing, you see how he just keeps it simple. You can't really explain, does he dribble past people? No. Does he score bangers? No. He just keeps it world-class basics. And that's what I see in Casemiro, just like a bit of a presence, bit of a force. He doesn't obviously dig out the players on the pitch the same way Roy Keane did, and he doesn't lead with that sort of aggression that Roy Keane did. But make no mistake, what he does on the pitch is the modern version of what Roy Keane would have been doing in 2023. And I think it's interesting that he seems to be getting more praise now at Manchester United than ever before. And why is that? If you take a look at what Graham Souness said, calling him a steady Eddie, which was ridiculous. Casemiro had won, I think he'd won, European Midfielder of the Year several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Which means that he was being recognised as being an excellent midfielder. Surely, right? And he was playing alongside excellent midfielders. Modric, Kroos, Casemiro is a midfield for the ages. That goes alongside Busquets, Xavi and Iniesta as one of the best midfield trios that the world has ever seen. But did Casemiro, in a lot of people's eyes, because he wasn't doing, the metronomic passing of Kroos or the showy creativity of Modric, was Casemiro sort of relegated to the third man in that sort of trio? I think in a lot of people's eyes, clearly in Graham Souness' eyes, he probably was. But is it because he's come when there was a lot of people thinking he was coming to Old Trafford for a payday, a lot of people thinking he left on Madrid's terms, a lot of people thinking, coming to the Premier League at this age, he's probably not going to cut it. Is it because he's come to a poor team and it's allowed him to stand out more? Is it because he's taken his game to another level? Has he been required to do a little bit more with the ball in the final third than he ever was required to do at Real Madrid? Is it because he's part of what could be a rebuild at Manchester United? Let's have a look at the stats. So it's hard to argue that he's playing better than in previous years. Last season, he had the highest number of blocks in La Liga with 65. He also ranked 5th in La Liga for passes into the final third, and that's when he's playing alongside Modric and Kroos. And he ranked 1st in La Liga for average recoveries per 90. They won the league by 13 points, and now they are currently 12 points behind Barcelona team. And that's a Barcelona team that Manchester United beat. Now, the guy is a top player and has been a top player for years around. And I think that Casemiro probably hasn't got any better. He's just carried on doing what Casemiro does. For the last 10 years, Real Madrid, I mean, you can argue even longer than that, but for the last 10 years, Madrid have been streets ahead of Manchester United. And it was 2013 when he actually joined them. And he's played with some top midfielders, and he's had serious success with them in that time. Madrid have had stars galore over the last 8-9 years. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo, Bale, Benzema, Ramos, Kroos, Modric, to name just a few. United have been trying to make do with Darmian, Memphis, and Fellaini, and Jones, and Ashley Young. Do you know what I mean? Now our squad is getting better, but it's still nowhere near the level of squad that we've seen in any of the last 10 years at Real Madrid. And Casemiro was always one of the better players in that squad. He was just never the star in that squad because Real Madrid is a Galactico team. That's literally like what they do. When you're world class and you play with less world class players, it's inevitable that you're going to stand out. Now, his role, I think, has changed. And I think he brings something different to the United team than he was required to bring in the Real Madrid team. Obviously, at Madrid for 8-9 years, different roles for him across that period, but he seems to have been given a lot more license. We think of him as this defensive midfielder, but he does a lot more than just the Makelele or Kante kind of role. He's played in a more disciplined role when he was at Real Madrid than he ever plays for Manchester United. When playing with those two, especially the last 3 or 4 years, he literally just screened. At United, we have a lot less quality in the centre of the park, certainly nothing at the level of Kroos and Modric, although Ericsson and the form Bruno's in at the moment, looking forward to seeing them three together because that could be quite powerful. But we've had so little quality in comparison to what Real Madrid have had in the centre of the park. We see him creating attacks, protecting the back four, breaking up play, assisting, scoring goals. He's being asked to do so much more at United, but he is delivering so much more, it seems, at United. And as mad as this sounds, there's more of an audience. The Premier League is more watched than La Liga. Outside of El Clasico, there is nobody tuning in for the average Spanish game. And yes, he was on the big stage multiple times in the Champions League, but invariably it was one of the goal scorers, your Bale, your Benzema, Ronaldo types, that was getting the headlines and not Casemiro. Anyone who watched Casemiro play was like, Jesus, he's good. But again, he's in a midfield where he's probably the third sexy name, behind Kroos, behind Modric. And when somebody tears it up in England, it does seem to get seen by more people. And for those of us living in England, consuming English media, watching a Premier League club, consuming Premier League and Manchester United-centric media, Casemiro's name's going to be coming up so much more often than it ever did when he was playing for somewhere else. The Premier League is the most watched league across the globe. And Casemiro doing it for Manchester United, who are the most watched team in the most watched league across the globe, is going to garner more attention. I think a lot more people are certainly seeing how good Casemiro is on a regular basis. My old man, for example, doesn't really watch any football outside of, I was going to say the Premier League, but it might even just be United in the grand scheme of things. And I don't think he's on his own in that sort of attitude where he only kind of watches United and Paddock. He comes to Paddock. But he's like watching that football and that's it. Probably watches the big Champions League games when they're on TV. In fact, I know he watches the big Champions League games when they're on TV. But outside of that, he's not really got the time to be watching tons and tons of football. And I think that's a very typical kind of attitude and routine for a lot of people. So as we've been at the games, leaving the matches, something my dad's gone, Jesus, I didn't know Casemiro was this good. But a lot of people did. And as you can see, a lot of people did not. Because the Champions League obviously peaks around about March, April, May. You might see someone for 3 or 4 games. You're not really seeing them over the course of a season. And when you get someone like Casemiro, it probably doesn't resonate as much as it does, like we said earlier, with some of the goal scorers that the Champions League has. And United's fall is one of the biggest stories in modern football. And just like the fall has been one of the biggest stories in recent times, United's rise will be one of the biggest stories in the near future. And since social media, the club, the size of United, being from where we were, Premier League winners and Champions League contenders, to where we've got in the last few seasons, the eyes are on us like never before. And especially because of the impact that Eric Ten Hag and Casemiro have had on United this season, the expectation is starting to grow again. And if United get new owners in the summer, which looks likely, and they're new owners that are prepared to spend money, the expectation will get back to the levels of when United were the best team in Europe. but with the social media scrutiny that comes with that as well, which we didn't really have the last time United were champions of Europe. Casemiro being a major part of that rebuild, I think will lead to him getting a lot more scrutiny, praise, and just general discussion around his impact and his all-round play. And I think his United form, the ability that he has always had, but he's not had the opportunity to show, to call Casemiro a brilliant defensive midfielder is understating him. He is a brilliant footballer that plays in midfield. He's a top all-rounder that is having a dramatic improvement of this Manchester United side. I can't wait to have him back in for the running because I think he's going to be very impactful. And I can't wait to see how he is next season once he's settled in. Give us your thoughts on what he can be for us. Can he lead us to a title? Can he do the sort of things we saw Roy Keane do, albeit in a lot shorter period of time? Roy Keane was here for a long time. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.